Welcome back to the Play On Footy YouTube channel. My name is Bailey. We are going to be rounding up the round 16 fixtures that have just been played, and boy, what a round it was. I mean, all the teams are back from the byes. The first game we're going to be kicking off is Brisbane versus Melbourne. Brisbane got the win by 5 points. Luggage was McClutch as usual. He's just got that sort of air about him in the midfield that I know it's full of stars like Dunkley, Zorko, Neil, for example, but McCluggage, yeah, he's just a special player. He at least gets a goal a game, and that goal was super important for the Brisbane Lions to get over Melbourne. Obviously, the second quarter really let down Brisbane, and they had to really work hard to get back into the game. But yeah, McCluggage really well. So did Dunkley and Oliver. 29 disposals, 1 goal, 1. Massive change from the previous week. So big ups to him. The next game was North versus Bullies. Yeah, interesting game. It probably wasn't the blowout that a lot of people were expecting. At least North were half competitive. North 60 to Bullies 77, so the Bullies got up. I did get my tip right for the Bulldogs, and I got my tip right for Brisbane. Cherry was huge in the ruck, and so was the Bont. Cherry got 129 AFL Fantasy, and the Bont got 126. And it was just one of those games where the Bullies did, most things right. They put Lob back in the back line, which was an interesting move, but I think it worked pretty well for them. So maybe they can explore that in other games beyond this. But yeah, North were actually pretty much in the game from the get-go, which is pleasing to see. They are making progress as a collective. So yeah, going forward, I think it's positive signs for North fans. But yeah, for Bulldogs fans, I think they obviously there's no excuses for them not to play finals. They got such a good list, and I think it would be bullish of me to say that they can't make finals. I definitely think they can. They've got Hawthorn that are really competing as well. A lot of the teams, and from 3rd to 13th, there's a lot of teams in that sort of lineup that are really competing hard. There's not many points really dividing them at all. So I think for the Bulldogs to get this win was obviously much needed, and where they go to next is anyone's guess. But yeah, got that tip right. Next game was Sydney versus Fremantle. This was an unbelievable game in terms of, I don't think anyone would have predicted this. The last time these two teams met was at Optus Stadium, and it was when Cam McCarthy unfortunately passed away, and the Freo Dockers, there was a lot of people saying like Freo as a collective just didn't look in it. Like, they've just obviously lost someone that a lot of people knew at the club, and for them to go from that game where I think they lost by 40 something points to this game here where they won by a point at the SCG, against potentially a lot of people are saying the favourites for the grand final to win the grand final, was fantastic. And Blakey really stood up in the back line. He got that run off half back, 121 AFL Fantasy, and Jeremy Sharp. A lot of people in AFL Fantasy trade out Jeremy Sharp, but obviously for him to step up, got a 98 AFL Fantasy, was fantastic. So I think that was a real good positive. The next game was Gold Coast. In the Sydney game, I unfortunately tipped Sydney. I think a lot of people would have tipped Sydney anyway. But in the next game, Gold Coast versus Collingwood. Gold Coast 101 to Collingwood 90. I tipped Collingwood in this game, funnily enough. Anderson, massive, 140 AFL Fantasy, and Nick Dacos, 115, was massive. But yeah, this game, it was a game where I think Collingwood just left a little bit too much too late, I think. And I think Fly, after the game, basically saying to the media that, yeah, how many times do you want to be in positions like this to get so close but not be able to finish the job? And I think that's really what was encompassing this game. Gold Coast definitely took their opportunities when they did, and Collingwood just weren't able to. And I think that's really what created this 16-point gap in the end, was that, they just left too much too late. But overall, I think Collingwood definitely bounce back this coming week against Essendon. I think they really do need to, if they want to stay in the top 4, and yeah, there's a lot to be shuffled around as well. I did tip Collingwood, as I said, so that was another one I got wrong. Next game was Crows 94 versus GWS 78. This one was a surprising one as well. I mean, Crows have just been so out of form. and out of whack. GWS are definitely having a form slump. There's no doubt about that. Whitfield, massive 160 AFL fantasy for GWS, and then Bowie's. Not Bowie's. Hinge 116 AFL fantasy for the Crows, and yeah, he's just been a real reliable defender for the Crows. There's no doubt about that. So it was good to see that. But yeah, the skills for GWS was pretty sloppy at times, and they just weren't. They were a bit passive at times, which was really sort of not annoying to see. But you just thought they could do better given the circumstances. Next game was Cats versus the Bombers. Cats 105, Bombers 60. This was a massive game for Cats because they really needed to get the job done, and for them to come out like they did. Really blew Bombers away. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Jai Caldwell, massive 145 AFL fantasy, and Bowers for the Cats, 123. Humphreys, the debutant, did really well. I think he got 65 AFL fantasy. He's definitely one to watch. But overall, I think the Cats can be very happy with that. There was no Tomahawk out there, and look, to be honest with you, if he is fit, and if he does make it to finals, I don't think they should play Tomahawk. I think his time is done. I don't think he'll have another season left in him next season. That's my bold prediction from now. But yeah, I think all in all, to make way for some youth and a bit of speed, the Cats need that, and I think their game derives off that. And to see Gary Rowan as well in this game really stand up to the occasion and really link up with Jeremy Cameron, who has been playing up the ground with Tomahawk in the side, but now that he's out of the side, Jeremy Cameron was that deep forward and that long option in the forward line, and Gary Rowan could then work up the ground, and that's back to the Sydney days. That's what Gary Rowan did mainly, so I think that role suits him perfectly. So yeah, the Cats got the job done. That was I tipped the Cats, so happy days with that. Next game was Port versus Saints. Port 62 over Saints 60. This one was at Marvel Stadium. Another close loss for Ross. I mean, I think that was the sixth or seventh loss under 10 points from what I remember for Ross Lions. So it's a season that's definitely got away for Ross the loss. But yeah, going forward, I think you can't deny Sinclair, 135 AFL fantasy, huge. Marshall, 119. He kicked 3 goals, which is a bit unusual for him. He did spend a little bit of time forward, which was basically, Max King's just absolutely struggling, and there's talks of him being traded. I think, to be honest, the Saints should cut their losses and let him go, because he's had enough time to develop for us to know what he's going to be like, and I think any more time put into him is going to be time wasted. So another honourable mention is Jason Orr-Francis, 112 AFL fantasy. He was huge, kicked some pivotal goals in this game, and it was basically, I think even in the third quarter, there was behind. It was like a game of ping pong. It was just backwards and forwards, and they at times weren't able to capitalise, but in the end, 2 points. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but Port did capitalise when they were supposed to. First gamer or second gamer Evans was huge for Port. He kicked a goal as well, so that was really good for them anyway. And Ken Hinkley, obviously very emotional post game, but you can imagine with all those Sack Hinkley signs, it has happened before. It happened in 2019, I believe. There were uproars of him basically saying, look, Sack Hinkley, but he has been there for just over a decade now at the club. Look, similar with Simo. I mean, at least Simo has won a flag. Ken Hinkley hasn't. But definitely something's got to happen at the end of the season for Port in their coaching panel, and similarly with the Eagles, which we'll get to very shortly. Next game was Tigers versus Carlton. Tigers 70 to Carlton 131. No surprises there. Nick Newman, bit of a surprise. He really rocketed up AFL Fantasy, 143, and Walsh, 132, which is really good to see. The Tigers, they just look really flat. They've got Tim Taranto in the middle, but apart from that, and Hopper as well, true. Hopper was there. But yeah, overall, just the usual suspects. Nank in the middle, doing his absolute best in the ruck. TDK was laid out, which was surprising for a lot of people, but he made way for Pitternet. But yeah, overall, it was a game that was pretty predictable. Carlton did what they wanted when they wanted and took advantage of every opportunity up forward, especially, and the Tigers just weren't able to keep up. Dusty came off with a bit of a back injury, and yeah, who knows, it might be his last season, or he might spend one more season off of the Gold Coast. But yeah, got that tip right. And the last game of the round, which was an absolute stinker for me personally, because I do go for West Coast Eagles. West Coast Eagles 33 versus Hawks 94. I mean, this was a game where we were clearly said by Simo and people at the West Coast Eagles, this is our most full strength team that we've had in a long time. You got to remember, we've had 2 years of just ravaged, a ravaged list because of injuries. We bring in Kelly, we bring in Reed, and Petruccelli was out, obviously. And then I think it was in the second quarter, Matt Flynn goes down. So in the ruck, we were out of all sorts. And then Meek was just dominating the ruck for Hawks. And we had to bring Bailey Williams out of the forward line into the middle to do the rucking. And I mean, I feel for Bailey Williams, because he's just literally for the last 2 years had to basically train both as a forward and then, you know, just be whacked in the middle to play ruck. And I don't think anyone wants that. No forward guy wants to do that. Even Oscar Allen did that for a while when we were struggling a couple of years back. But Hawks just had better leg speed, more power, and just more gut running. And they were just way more hungry. The Eagles are just way too passive. And it's funny because a lot of people say the 2018 flag was led by Sam Mitchell, and I thought at the time that was an interesting thing to say, but yesterday it was evidently made clear to me how clear that is and how true that is, because he's a master tactician. And yeah, I just don't know where to from here. And I think Simo is definitely coaching for his job. Come end of year, I'd be very surprised if they extend it. And I think Don Pike has to be ruthless. And no one Mr. Nice Guy. Who would replace Simo? Definitely Dean Cox. Dean Cox is wanting that head coach role. He was an assistant coach at the Eagles, I think, from 2014 to 2017. I want to say, but he definitely wants the head job. And if it's not at Sydney, which I doubt, if they win the premiership under Horse, he'll definitely stay. Most likely Dean Cox will come back to Eagles. I definitely predict that. And where to from Simo? Probably North, or the new team Tasmania, coaching with Alistair Clarkson. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see what happens from here. But yeah, Hawks are definitely playing finals this year. No one can change my mind about that. So watch this space. What do you guys reckon? Comment down below, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.